This episode of the Comlink is brought to you by our new sponsor, tblocks.com. For just $10, they'll send you a new t-shirt each month. If you go to tblocks.com and you enter the code Comlink, you get 15% off your first month. Hey Star Wars fans, David Collins from the Comlink here. You know, we recently took a road trip to the mega collection of Gus Lopez, and today we're going to look at a piece of film history, the original Death Star from Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Check it out. Well, so first of all, thank you so much for letting us come in here to your house and look at your collection, because this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that, you know, there are so many brilliant things here to see, but the first thing that catches your eye, obviously, is this incredible piece. Now, this is the original Episode 4, A New Hope Death Star, and they only built one, is that right?
That's right, yeah. This is the original model. This is the only three-dimensional model they made of the Death Star, so it's kind of a special piece. My collection and in Star Wars in general.
I mean, this has obviously had a long history, and what seems so rare to me about this is that Lucasfilm Archives has a lot of this stuff,
Yep.
but this was lost for years,
Right.
Is that right?
They really didn't have really good oversight of the stuff they made for the films. Like a lot of stuff was gifted, things were thrown away. This was an example of something basically thrown away. They had been storing a lot of their props and models and costumes in various storage units. And what happened was that the people that owned the place, the storage place, said, hey, you know, we're kind of they were moving, and they said, we need to clear the place. And they basically said, yeah, we'd throw it out. And it accidentally got packed with these people moving to Missouri. And so when they arrived, they're like, oh, it was meant to be thrown away, actually. They hadn't planned to move with all the stuff they were moving to Missouri.
So but didn't they contact Lucasfilm and say, hey, all your stuff is going?
Yeah, that's what the story I heard was, that they actually did give them notice, and they were just, forget it. I mean, they just didn't care.
Probably too overwhelmed with making Empire or Jedi. What year was that, do you know?
But it probably would have been the late 70s or early 80s time frame, yeah.
Just very shortly then after.
Shortly thereafter, yeah. And it's true about a lot of props from that era. You know, just lots of stuff got lost, or was just, you know, they really didn't care to preserve it until Return of the Jedi. They really changed that. And then it exchanged hands with a few people in Missouri. So it was owned by these people at an antique mall. But they didn't really know what it was, and they had it outside. They actually literally had it outside this little antique shop. And it's in a rural place in Missouri, and this one guy who's a big Star Wars fan was driving by, and you know, this is probably like, I want to say like mid-80s or something kind of time frame. And he drives by and he's like, that's the Death Star, you know, that looks like the Death Star. And so he spent a little bit of time kind of researching it, and he, you know, and it took him about a week to figure out that is the original Death Star. And then what happened was he went back to buy it, and they found out that it got sold. It got sold to a local music shop, and so he was all bummed. I mean, he's in this remote area of Missouri. You know, it's like the Death Star shows up in your hometown. You know, and how do you miss out on that? So what happened was, years later, his brother and a friend said, "Hey, this music store is going out of business. So let's go get the Death Star." And so they went to this music store, and everything had been liquidated at the music store except the Death Star, which was in the corner. The original radar dish was lost, so that one is a replica.
Oh, this is a replica
That's
here?
a replica, yeah, to give it
Okay.
context. But the original's lost, no one knows where it is, and it was used as a garbage can. They had stuffed the inside of the Death Star with garbage.
Because you can you can just remove this?
That could be removed, and then it's hollow on the inside, so they were using it as a garbage can.
Unbelievable.
After they owned it, these three guys had it for a decade. So they had it all through the 90s. A few people knew they had it. And I just told them, you know, if you ever decide you want to sell it, you know, let me know. And I wasn't really into original props at the time. But I thought at the time, it was just 99, that I'd love to own a big piece from Star Wars. So I was just like, I'll buy the Death Star.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, I mean, you mentioned sort of the authentication
Oh, yes.
process.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Because, I
Yeah.
mean, you look at this,
Yeah.
how do you know it's not a fake? How do you
Sure,
know? I mean,
sure.
like, for example,
Yeah.
I see these little screw holes here.
Right.
I would think it would be fan-built upon first look, but...
Right. For example, the screw holes are there to kind of mount it to the frame, but if you look on this side of it, there are little covers on the screw holes that have not popped off. In some cases, they're popped off, so that's why you see the screw holes. But it is actually a fairly easy piece to authenticate, in that the amount of detail on it is incredible, and you could just take any little section, like say you take an inch-by-inch section of the Death Star, and when you put a light source on the inside, there's all these tiny little holes to kind of light up the surface of the Death Star. So you can pick a random section, take the Blu-ray, compare, and they match exact. I mean, it would be impossible for someone to create all the 1,000 little pinpoints of light that occur on the surface of it. And not just by there are other ways to authenticate it too. Even on the surface, the patterns are all unique. And so it's a very easy thing to screen match, which is the way a lot of prop collectors match these things. Is you try to take a piece and you try to pick little artifacts on it and match it to the thing on screen. And that can be scratches, unintended things as well. And so that's, in many ways, the best way to authenticate a piece is a screen match, because every other method has drawbacks and flaws. Like, if you're even provenance has drawbacks where you know the chain of ownership, but you don't know, unless you're there when the thing was filmed and the person hands it to you right after it was filmed, and you know that that was filmed actually makes it onto screen. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many places where that can fall apart. But screen matching is the best, because it is definitely that piece you see on screen.
Right. How would they have screen matched back in the 80s? Obviously now with Blu-ray you can punch in and look at something high fidelity. But back in the 80s, I mean, it wasn't even on home video.
Even
in the late 70s.
Yeah, it was in the 80s, early 80s. You start to get the home video. Yeah, you can on video. You can probably screen match it, because it's that good for that. Because you can take a wider area of the light, and you totally see the pattern. And then it's kind of funny now, because I'm so into the original props now from Star Wars that it's kind of a tough act to follow. You never quite ever match this thing, which I was just on a whim. I was like, oh yeah, I should buy the Death Star.
Well, and what an important piece of film history here, sitting in your living room too, because I mean. It makes me wonder, do you consider yourself as a collector, do you consider yourself an archivist or a film historian in a certain way? Because this could have easily been destroyed and lost to history, but here it is, almost, coming up on 40 years later, almost perfectly preserved with just a little bit of weathering.
The significance is not lost to me, and you get to a point in collecting where, you start out, like many collectors, you start out just stuff you like and all this stuff, but you get to a point, if you start finding some significant pieces, you're like, this takes on a different meaning than cool stuff I got. It starts to be like this. This is actually a significant piece of history for people into this film, and so part of it is you get into how do you then give people access to it, and so that's interviews, magazine articles, but then also have loaned it to museums. Also have people, local friends and stuff, over here to see it. So you want to make sure people have access to it as well, because it is in a private collection.
Amazing. Fantastic. I mean, this is worth a visit to Seattle alone. Amazing. So thank you.
I never get tired of it. Seeing it every day, it's pretty awesome to see.
Great.